talking about my guy, Shedeur Sanders.
It get dangerous.
Because, I think we know he is the algorithm. But when people start playing with his name, why would Todd Monken go up and tell the media Shedeur is getting the first team?
Something is off in Cleveland right now. Shedeur Sanders was told this was his day. First team reps, the whole practice, the QB1 rotation running through him. Then it flipped. Not once, twice. First, it was the head coach's own words to the media. Then it was a completely different story from the field. And when people started asking questions, the Browns didn't send out Todd Monken to clean it up. They sent out a spokesperson. Stick around because by the time this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why that one detail matters more than anything else that happened this weekend. Let's start with what actually happened on the field, because Shedeur Sanders did not have a quiet Saturday. He had one of his best days of training camp. A slot fade to Gage Lawrence for a touchdown, clean reads, efficient decisions, against Cleveland's twos no less, which is the part that gets buried under everything else. 3 incompletions all day. That is a strong outing by any measure, rookie or not. But here's where it gets messy. Head coach Todd Monken went in front of the media before practice and said this, word for word. Shedeur would take the majority of the 1 reps that day. Not Dylan Gabriel, not a rotation. Shedeur with the 1s. That is not a small statement. In a training camp where every single rep is being tracked, dissected, and used to build a quarterback competition narrative, the head coach naming a starter for a day's practice is news. So Shedeur shows up, has one of his cleanest days of camp, and the story should be simple. Guy earns his reps, guy performs. Except that is not the story that actually played out on the field. Because according to people who were actually watching practice, it was Deshaun Watson who took every single first-team rep that day, not Shedeur, the exact opposite of what the head coach told the media before the ball was even snapped. Now, mix-ups happen. Coaches misspeak. Names get flipped in a fast media session. That is normal. What is not normal is what came next. And that is where this whole thing stops looking like a simple mistake and starts looking like something the organization needed to get ahead of before it became a bigger story on its own. Because this is not a situation where the beat writers just shrugged and moved on. This is a situation serious enough that the Browns felt the need to have someone go on record and explain it. And in a league where teams control information like it is a competitive advantage, that alone tells you this was not nothing.
When you hear things like this,
and
right?
they bring it, Shedeur 1 step.
He's got it.
Slot fade, Gage Larvin,
What a ball.
what a dime. That is a dot. From Shedeur Sanders,
you see what I'm saying?
Who had his best day of training camp here. Touchdown, Browns, Sanders to...
We're talking about a guy who can make throws like that, who's been making throws like that all camp long. But somehow there is a new controversy surrounding our guy too. Man, that was a good ball. There's a new controversy. Now, and it'll be one thing to talk about one play. How about third-hand accounts? How has Shedeur looked in this camp? Let's hear it.
The plays have looked cleaner with Shedeur than they have with Deshaun. And everyone's saying, like, well, Shedeur's had better days in that regard. Yes, you're right.
So if Shedeur really got the reps Monken promised, why did it look completely different on the field? Let's dig into the actual explanation. Here is what happened after the confusion started spreading. In most cases, when a head coach misspeaks about who took what reps, the story dies right there. A reporter asks a follow-up on Monday, the coach clarifies, everybody moves on. That is not what happened here. Instead, a Browns spokesperson stepped in directly to address it. Think about how rare that actually is. Coaches misspeak about depth charts constantly across the league. It almost never requires an official team statement to walk it back. The explanation given was that there were specific personnel groupings the coaching staff wanted to see Deshaun Watson run through, and that is why he ended up with the bulk of the first team work that day, instead of Shedeur. On the surface, that is a reasonable football explanation. Coaches do build practice scripts around personnel packages. But here is the problem with that explanation once you actually think it through. If there were specific groupings the staff wanted to see Watson execute, there was nothing stopping them from running those same groupings with the second team and still giving Shedeur his promised time with the ones. Watson could have gotten his personnel work on Monday. Nothing about the explanation actually requires Shedeur to lose the reps he was publicly promised. That is the gap that has people paying attention, not the fact that Watson got extra work. Quarterback rooms rotate reps all the time, and that is completely normal in a real competition. The issue is the way it was communicated. The head coach said one thing to the media, the field told a different story, and the walkback explanation does not fully close that gap. It just gives a reason that could technically apply while leaving the bigger question unanswered. And that is really the core of why this is getting attention in the first place. It's not that Shedeur played badly, because he did not. He had one of his best days of camp. It's not that Watson getting reps is some kind of crime, because rotating quarterbacks through practice work is standard procedure. It's the mismatch between what was said publicly and what actually happened on the grass, and the fact that the organization felt it needed a formal statement to address that mismatch at all.
Shedeur is getting the first team reps. This is what he said, right?
So Todd, will Shedeur take all of the first team reps today?
It's always Mary Kay. It's always Mary Kay.
Might end up with a 7-on-7, might end up where Sean gets one of those. That's what we've been doing, but Shedeur will take the majority of the 1 reps today.
Now, before you head to the comments to argue about what this means for Shedeur long term, there is a completely separate storyline blowing up somewhere else in the league this same weekend, and it has nothing to do with Cleveland at all. Over in Las Vegas, the Raiders had their own headline, and this one has zero connection to the Shedeur situation. It is just a wild story on its own. Head coach Clint Kubiak confirmed that quarterback Kirk Cousins and star pass rusher Maxx Crosby violated team rules by physically fighting during practice, and both players were held out of the following day's session as a result. According to the account of what happened, Crosby was in Cousins' face, physically making contact, hitting at his arm and bearing down on him, and Cousins, who by every account is one of the more reserved, clean-cut personalities in the league, reportedly snapped back with a warning that he was not going to keep taking it. Kubiak did not get into every detail publicly, but he was direct about the fact that it happened and that it crossed a line the team was not willing to let slide, which is exactly why both players sat out the next practice. Now, here is why this story matters on its own merits, completely separate from anything happening with Shedeur. This is one of the more unexpected pairings you could imagine getting physical at practice. Crosby is one of the most intense competitors in the sport, a guy who plays every single rep like it is the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Cousins has built his entire reputation on being the even-keeled, business-first quarterback who almost never shows public frustration. Two very different temperaments colliding hard enough that the head coach had to step in and enforce a rules violation is a genuinely rare moment. Both players are expected back at practice, and Kubiak made clear the expectation going forward is simple: professionalism on the field, regardless of how heated things get. It is a reminder that camp intensity is real everywhere in the league right now, not just in Cleveland. Every quarterback room and every position group is fighting for jobs and reps this time of year, and tempers are going to flare somewhere. This time it happened to be in the Nevada desert, with two players nobody expected to be at odds with each other.
But now I have to start thinking, is Shedeur going to get traded? Or is he, or they just don't want him there? Or is there something going on? Or did Jimmy Haslam make that call and say, the money's invested, get Deshaun Watson on the field no matter what you do? Because this is there's an excuse, and then there are sometimes when you give an excuse and the excuse makes things worse, and that is one of these situations. A Browns spokesperson said there was personnel groupings he wanted to see Deshaun with. Deshaun took every single first team rep. So, I love the fact that, shout out to all the Browns media members who wanted to think, oh, it's because Shedeur's getting demoted and didn't get. No, it's not. I'm sorry about it.
Two different teams, two completely different kinds of chaos. One is a quarterback fighting for reps he was promised. The other is a quarterback fighting off his own teammate. Let's bring it all back together. So here is where things actually stand. In Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders had one of his sharpest days of camp, then walked into a genuine mix-up between what the head coach told the media and what actually happened on the field, one that required an official team statement to even partially explain. That is not confirmation of anything sinister. It is a real, documented inconsistency that deserves to be watched closely, especially with Monday's practice coming up as the next data point. And in Las Vegas, completely unrelated to any of that, 2 Raiders got physical enough during a walkthrough that the head coach had to bench them both for a day and publicly confirm it happened. Different building, different quarterback room, different circumstances entirely, but both stories say the same thing about where the league is right now. Camp battles anywhere. Reps are currency. Every mixed signal gets picked apart, and every flash of tension between teammates gets noticed, because the stakes attached to training camp performance have never felt higher for the players living through it. For Shedeur specifically, the next real answer comes Monday. Either the reps line up with what was promised, or this becomes a pattern instead of a one-day story. So here is the real question heading into the week. Was Saturday just a miscommunication that got blown up because of how much attention is on this quarterback room? Or is there something more deliberate going on with how Cleveland is managing Shedeur's reps behind the scenes? Drop your take in the comments, miscommunication or something more, and let's see what the numbers say when Monday's practice reps get tracked. If you want the next update the second it drops, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Smash like and subscribe.